Hi folks, sorry about technical difficulties earlier, not totally sure what happened there, but it's not the worst Zoom experience I've had. That would probably be the very first Zoom hearing that I went to after the start of the so-called pandemic, which I won't get into now because I understand that I've got limited time with you folks. But for those of you who don't know who I am, and I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you before, but for those of you who have not met me before, my name is Alexander Haberbush, and I'm an attorney with the Lex Rex Institute. And I was invited here tonight by your very own Deborah Pauly, who is actually an employee of mine. She's now an associate at our firm. So who is the Lex Rex Institute? Well, Lex Rex is Latin for the law is king, because we believe that all of our officials should be held accountable to the law. That is their sworn duty to uphold the Constitution, and we take that extremely seriously. Our job is to enforce that oath on our public officials. So to that end, we fight to uphold the constitutional values that we all hold dear. We fight for election integrity, and we fight for the rights of those who cannot fight for themselves. And I've been asked to do sort of a monthly legal update for you folks. I'm very grateful to be able to do that tonight. And I think probably the best place to start with that would be sort of an overview of the cases that we're currently working on. Well, we defend both the highest and the lowest, all the way down from 10-year-old girls who were forced to stay overnight in rooms with people who refused to identify what gender they were, and then a school that stonewalled the parents about access to this information for months, claiming that it was illegal to give it to them. Now, the camp they went to is claiming that refusing to say their gender, well, that was an expression of free speech, and they did what's called an anti-SLAPP motion, trying to keep us from litigating against them. We won handily in that at the lower level, and now they're trying to appeal it. Obviously, this gets pretty expensive, so we are a 501c3 if you want to support these girls. Currently, it's funded totally out of my own pocket. So if anybody does have the generosity to fund that, you can do that at givesendgo.com/lawsal. And we defend also the highest, or at least the most important and prominent in our legal community, even those who have been asked personally to defend the President of the United States. I'm speaking, of course, of Dr. John Eastman, who is currently being targeted by what I can only call a witch hunt as a result of his actions during the 2020 election. Now, they say it's because of what he did in 2020. I think it's really because John is extremely effective at what he does. He's been effective for decades. They saw that he was successful in 2000 with his testimony in front of the Florida State Legislature. You might remember that incident that took place. He was effective in Prop 8 in California. He was instrumental in getting IRS targeting of conservative organizations completely stopped. In fact, even identifying that it existed and then getting it stopped. And he's won countless or participated in countless legal victories before the U.S. Supreme Court. I think his opponents saw we need to neutralize this guy, and they're going to use any excuse they can. And that excuse, of course, is the fact that his client happens to be none other than President Donald Trump. So what are they doing to Dr. Eastman? Well, there's the criminal case going on against him in Georgia, which is utterly absurd. I mean, it's got allegations in there like conspiracy to impersonate a public officer. You know what that refers to? Well, John had gotten on Zoom and talked to the Georgia State Legislature about the possibility of appointing an alternate slate of electors if it turned out that their election had not been appropriately conducted. Those electors are the public officer that he was conspiring to impersonate. Now, electors aren't public officers. That's one thing. Also, there's no conspiracy to impersonate anything. It's an alternate slate, but I won't get into too much legal technicality. The issue that I'm really here to talk to you guys about tonight is his case before the state bar court in California. So what's that? Well, to add really insult to injury, they've decided they're not just going to go after him criminally, they're going to try to take away his license to practice law. And to do that in California, you have to first have basically a trial. Those trials are heard before the state bar court. Well, John, being the enterprising guy that he is, decided, hey, you know what? There's a lot of evidence of illegality and irregularity that took place in 2020 that, for a variety of reasons, did not have an opportunity to get heard in really any court in the country. So what's happening now is this state bar proceeding has turned into an opportunity to present this evidence that we were denied the opportunity to present in 2020. You can actually watch that. You can go on to the State Bar's website and get a link to Zoom. I think Deborah can provide you with that. And you can log into Zoom. You can watch live John Eastman's trial. It begins again next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. I highly encourage everyone to do that. At least watch part of it. I don't expect you to watch the whole thing. Originally, this case was supposed to take 2 weeks. It's been 6 at this point. So I've had a lot of other obligations that I've had to move around to accommodate the fact that this is still going on. And I'm sure Dr. Eastman has had similar difficulties. In fact, I know he has. But he could really, really use your support right now, because really the end game of this, like the end game of appealing our anti-SLAPP decision, is our opponents know they're better funded and have more resources than we do. And they figure if they can drive up the cost of this stuff, they can neutralize us. That's not true. We can accomplish a whole heck of a lot more with a whole lot less. But that doesn't mean that we can do it with nothing. And John can really, really use your support. You know, the expenses of his Georgia case alone are probably going to be somewhere in the $1 million range. So I've brought this handy paper. It says where you can go. It says johneastmanlegaldefense.com. That's the new site that he is using to support his work, johneastmanlegaldefense.com. johneastmanlegaldefensefund.com. I'm sorry. The other one probably doesn't go anywhere. johneastmanlegaldefensefund.com. Is that enough times? Okay, my assistant tells me that's enough times to say that. But yeah, he could really, really use your support. Our Constitution is not going to defend itself. It needs lawyers who are willing to bring these cases, and our opponents are doing everything in their power to prevent us from doing that. They are going after lawyers who are willing to bring election challenges to show that our elections were not secure and that they were in need of auditing. Even just bringing those allegations apparently is sufficient to strip somebody's license and charge them with criminal allegations. None of the big firms are taking these cases anymore. But we are, and Dr. Eastman still is. You know, it's just earlier today, there was an election law case that I was involved on. It's Carrie Lake's case. That one's still going to be going on too. I think on Monday that starts up again. You can live stream that too if you're interested. I encourage you to do that. But we are still bringing these election issues. In Shasta County, we are supporting their efforts to get safe and secure elections. But we don't just do election law. Anyway, it's been a pleasure to speak with you guys. We got a whole lot of other cases that I'd love to discuss, but I guess we can leave those for next month or for the month after. Thank you so much for having me. And Deborah, thank you for inviting me to do this. Deborah's a fantastic employee, by the way, guys. You are so lucky to have her as your president. And we are so lucky to have her working on staff now. So, yeah, thanks again for having me, and we will see you folks again next month.